Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. Happy first day of spring. My name is Sarah Proctor. I'm candidate for the Circuit Court Judge here in Charles County. I've been a prosecutor for 19 years. I first started in Florida, where I prosecuted in the areas of Jacksonville, the Orlando area, and then moved here in 2013. Myself and my husband, we moved back to our family roots. I lost my father due to cancer unexpectedly. My husband's father, who is in Delaware at the time with his family, and mom and siblings had a stroke and needed care. So we came back here to Maryland to our family roots. We built on our house for my mother to have her own personal living space. We have a son, Matthew, who attends Archbishop Neal School. He's in first grade. We are parishioners at Sacred Heart Catholic Church as well. My little family history: my father and grandfather served in the U.S. Navy. My father was a Morse code operator for the submarines. After his honorable discharge from the Navy, my parents got married in Cheverly, Maryland, where my mom's family was living at the time. And the day after their wedding, they moved to Florida, specifically for my dad's job. He got hired as an electrical engineer post-Navy. So I was primarily raised there in Florida until we all moved back here in 2013. From my career in Florida, I was able to bring some expert experience here, specifically to Charles County, to the state's attorney's office. I interviewed with Mr. Covington, and at the time that I interviewed, the need that he needed was for the sexual abuse and the violent crimes that was on the rise. And that's the caseload that he assigned me to. I also brought here, the rules of evidence. The rules of evidence and knowing whether or not you can prosecute a case from a criminal standpoint as a judge is very important. I say this because the circuit court judge is the one who's going to be listening to the arguments of whether or not the state has met their burden. So you all, as the voters, have to ask yourself, who do you want for your next circuit court judge? Do you want someone who's made the argument before of whether or not the state has met their burden, either as a prosecutor or a defense attorney? If you do, in that regard, I am your vote. There is 3 of us that are running for the judge position, and the experience is different from all 3 of us. So please do your research. Also, the rules of evidence apply to cases. You have the rape shield law. You have self-defense. Can you get your DNA in? Do you know what you have to do to get your DNA in? There's lots of rules of evidence that you need to be fluid with. I have had over 100 criminal jury trials. Not all here in Maryland, but that is combined with Florida. I am fluid in the legal knowledge of the law and the rules of evidence that apply to the cases. And this just isn't criminal law, this is also civil and family law that the circuit court judges also address. The digital evidence, technology, are you fluid in that as well? It's ever so rising, the cybercrime and the cybersecurity. Do you know what rules apply to that? I am familiar with that. Compassion. I believe compassion is necessary as a circuit court judge. I have compassion. I just know as a prosecutor when to use it and when not to. And I will do the same if elected to the circuit court bench. For 19 years, I have been balancing public safety, the exercise of discretion, victim safety, when to pursue charges, and when not to pursue charges. The assistant state's attorney has the obligation to review the cases and decide whether or not the charges can be brought to court, whether or not the evidence is there. We took an oath to uphold the Constitution and the law. I have been doing that for 19 years. It is the same similar oath that a circuit court judge would take when arguments are made before the circuit court judge, is applying the law and the rules of evidence to the case before them. As a prosecutor, I've been doing that for 19 years prior to entering the courtroom. And I've been making the hard decisions. I've had to tell victims that we cannot go forward. I've had to tell law enforcement we cannot go forward on the investigation. The evidence is not there. I've been making those decisions for 19 years. Some of the cases that I handled here in Charles County, and on my website, there's a more complete list, if you will, of a sampling. But just to give you guys an idea of what the cases I handled here. One moment, get my list out. My very first case when I was hired, sitting at my desk when I came in May of 2014, was the State versus Douglas Pineda. That was a violent rape of a Hispanic female here in Charles County. Was the very first case sitting on my desk, along with some district court to know the familiarity of district court. I handled that case and got it assigned to me in May, and by September, there was a plea of guilty to it. That was a very traumatic, violent case here that I started off with, and speaking with the victim and her family. But those are the types of cases that I was doing from day one here in Charles County. Those are the types of cases that the defense bar met me on, that I got introduced to them on, is the violent cases. I didn't start off in district court where I got to meet people doing traffic cases and possession cases. I started off doing the most serious work here in Charles County. I held teachers, police officers, residents, non-residents accountable when they raped a child, killed their neighbor or domestic partner, when they distributed the deadly narcotics, when they put guns to people's head to rob them, when they distributed the child pornography. Holding people accountable does not mean you are not compassionate. I know the difference. And I know that difference. And if elected to the circuit court judge, I will apply that from the bench. It's up to you, the voters, to decide if you want a circuit court judge that knows the difference. And I do. State versus Kenny Morris, a white male who attempted to kill a black male over a dispute of a parking space. I tried the case twice, because the first time it got reversed due to a jury instruction issue from the court. We tried it again. We pursued justice again and got a conviction. And the second time, the appellate affirmed it. State versus Keith Crixton, a white male who was a substitute teacher with the Charles County Public Schools system and sexually abused 2 students. State versus Armando Rodriguez, a Hispanic male, a corrections officer, who brutally attempted to kill his wife while she was handcuffed to the stairwell of their home. The Charles County Sheriff's Officer, we pursued an investigation for child pornography. Due to the volume, meaning the number of images, the federal authorities picked up the case for prosecution. But I mention that case because I cannot stress how I will hold all accountable. State versus D'Angelo Hemsley, a black male who murdered his father-in-law in front of his granddaughter and another youth. This youth that he was mentoring at the time. And then some of you in this very room know, maybe 15 miles from here, State versus Marcus Johnson, another homicide that I prosecuted, a black male who murdered his friend that he called his friend, his neighbor. Did it horrifically in front of his wife and his children. Shot the man in his own home in front of his children and putting his children in harm's way as well. State versus Carlos Bell, a black male who was a Charles County public school teacher, who at the last count sexually abused 42 children. That is 42 families in our community. We were only able to identify 34. Those of us that worked that case probably still have PTSD to this day. That is a general sampling of the everyday case load I prosecuted in Charles County. If you want a judge who is going to hold people accountable, all people accountable, then that is me. I will hold people accountable. However, accountability does not always mean a prison sentence. Not every case that I prosecuted resulted in a prison sentence. Most did because it was the violent nature of the crimes that I prosecuted. But due to my 19 years of experience as a prosecutor, I see firsthand the resources that we are lacking in the courts. I'm going to start off with one of the mental health resources. We need more. I am dedicated, if I am elected, to continue to retain the resources we have and build on it. Most often, I got assigned what was deemed as a mental health case. And I would go into court and I would tell whatever judge I was in front of, it's a mental health case. And they knew what that meant. They knew that this was going to be a slow and long process of check-ins on the defendant to make sure they were stable to be in this community. Because I view that as a job of a prosecutor. I could have easily just said, let's go straight on probation and been done with it. But unfortunately, I made people get evaluations and make sure the resources are in place so that they can thrive in this community and give them what they need to thrive in this community. Accountability also can be in the form of rehabilitation, addictions, drugs, and alcohol. Not every case or fact scenario is worthy of rehabilitation, but as a circuit court judge, you need to know when they are and when they're not. I have that experience in prosecution. I know when to offer rehabilitation and when not to. I'm going to address diversion programs. I heard about diversion programs the last election cycle. To me, it's what candidates use as a buzzword. That does not mean they're not needed in Charles County. They are very much so needed in Charles County. However, the judges we as a judge, if elected, I can't go into court and be like, I'm going to put you in a diversion program, go do this, and then the case will be dismissed. I can't do that on my own if elected. The diversion programs require the state's attorney's office to offer it. And it's basic contract law, basic civil contract law and how we resolve our cases. So when I hear these candidates out there saying, I'm going to bring diversion cases, really, how are you legally going to do that? The conversation needs to be with the state's attorney. Because if the state's attorney offers a diversion program, then the judge and the defendant, the parties, can accept it. So I've heard that. I'm not against diversion programs when applicable, but again, it's not up to the court to implement a diversion program. The state's attorney's office has to offer it as they are the authority who charges the cases. As a prosecutor for 19 years, I did not choose the victims. As a prosecutor, you have to keep an open mind. We all have our own background and our own story. That does not mean that the person that would come through my door as a victim has the same background or story as me. So for 19 years, I've been listening and keeping an open mind on all my cases, and I will continue to do so from the bench if elected. As a judge, if elected, I equivalent it to baseball, what a judge's role is, what the job of a judge is. The job of a judge is to call balls and strikes. If elected, it's not going to be my job to collect the outs or get the out or score the runs anymore. I am very well aware of that, and I am ready to just call balls and strikes. For 19 years, I have spent on average 4 to 5 hours per day in a courtroom. Sometimes we could be there till 1 a.m. waiting on a jury verdict. The last time I did that was State versus Packer. It was a domestic violence case that went in late into the night for a jury verdict, where it was an assault on his domestic partner, and when the police responded, he decided to take aim at the police with a shotgun. Being a prosecutor is challenging and isolating. Thankfully, I've had supportive family and friends for the last 19 years to do it. I make decisions outside the courtroom that the general public doesn't know about. Whether to grant a search warrant to the police, whether to file cases, whether not to file cases. Is the evidence here? Is the evidence not here? I have had difficult conversations. It's isolating because the law of the public record and the confidentiality that must be maintained by prosecutors. And it also applies to the circuit court judge. We have integrity that has to be maintained in the system. So I get friends and acquaintances here in the community that want to talk to me about a case, whether it's pending or closed. And I simply say, I cannot talk to you about it. And then we move on. If elected, I will have to abide by rules of the canons. But let me tell you this, there is no judicial ethic rule that says I can't be part of the community anymore. I will continue to be part of this community. I am not going to go hide if elected for a 15-year term. Okay? You can still be part of this community and be a circuit court judge, and I plan to do so. The youth hold a special place for me. I have worked with youth for over 11 years. Sadly, most of the cases, my victims were youth. They persevere. They are resilient. But to watch them grow and overcome the trauma that was endured to them is a special place that I hold dearly. And I just wasn't just here in Charles, in Florida. We had mock trials, we had mentors, we went into the school, and I have continued it here today. And I handled a murder case here in Charles County in which there was 4 individuals arrested and charged. There was a female, barely an adult, barely over 18 years of age. Her actions coupled with her mouth, and we argued this in court, is what caused that gun to be fired. She wasn't the shooter, but her actions and her mouth caused that gun to be fired. She came back for a violation of probation, and we were before the circuit court judge, and part of her violation had to do with her getting stable housing and her needing a job. And she was doing the best she could. And the circuit court judge that was presiding over the case said, I know Miss Freeman would take you into her house if she could. And he was right. He already saw the bond that I had with her over this 2.5-year period. If I wasn't prosecuting her, I probably would have opened my door to her. I'm a giver at heart, but I know when to give and I know when not to give. And that is also a trait that the circuit court judge needs. Part of my responsibilities with the Charles County and St. Mary's County State's Attorney's Office is the Child Fatality Review Board. This is a review board that makes up of many community partners, if you will, the health department, the local police, and the school system, depending on the case. But we got together once a fatality happened, and we would have to review the case and figure out if there's anything that the resources in this community could have done differently to prevent it. My first year here in Charles County, I sat on this review board, and it was fatalities of children from bicycle accidents, co-sleeping, socioeconomics that played part of it, distracted drivers, and it was troubling. I had recently, going through the birth of my child in 2015, and everything that hospital gave me, I came down here and to my child with fatality review board, and I said, do we have this? Because I didn't deliver at Savista. I said, does Charles County Regional, do they have this? And there was a need for resources that I learned that we needed to do. So I went to Mr. Covington, after my first year. And I said, I want to have an annual health and safety fair. And I want to get the child fatality review team on board. And he gave me the green light. The first year, we organized it at J.P. Ryan in 2016. We had local law enforcement there. We had EMS. We had the police. We had the Charles County Hospital there doing the car seat safety checks and offering car seats to those that needed them. We had a flu clinic on a Saturday. We had the Department of Social Services out registering people for benefits on a Saturday. And we made sure that the bilingual was covered. We had activities for the kid. We had CPR classes. We had bullying classes, internet safety awareness classes. And I had mental health resources on the community partners there for anyone that needed it. The day was such a success that I realized, along with my team that I had put together, we needed a more centralized, more walkable area of the community. So after 2016, I partnered with Benjamin Stoddard, and it became the Health and Safety Block Party from 2017 on. We even had it last year. We skipped 2020 because of COVID. But otherwise, we've had it every single year. In the partnership with Principal Williams at Benjamin Stoddard, from 2017 till now, we went from, I think, 100 families to over 300 families that come to our event. Chick-fil-A kicks in the sandwiches for the kids. We have the bike helmets. We have the car safety. There's bounce house. There's carnival games. The health department's on there. The Department of Social Services is there. The law enforcement is there. We have the Hope Trailer out addressing the addictions needs. And that is what I do. So do I care about the health and safety of this community? Yes, I do. I'm going to continue doing my part and making sure this is a safe and healthy community for all. Being a circuit court judge is just not about criminal law. There is also family and civil law as a circuit court judge. As the prosecutor on the Carlos Bell case, a huge concern of all the victims was their right to privacy. When a case is filed, if it goes to trial, the victim has to testify. It's rare that we can prevent that. Very rare. Which means their identity is out for the public. These families, due to the facts of that case, the HIV positive by Mr. Bell, being a teacher, the ages of these kids range from 11 to 17. Still very, very young. It has much of their life in front of them. And all the victims were male. So you can imagine why the privacy concerns was very important to these families. Only one child came forward before law enforcement went knocking on the door. And that was after his mom found the text message. So after the conclusion of the criminal case, I began my work with the civil attorneys. Some families filed a civil lawsuit. I worked on the civil case with the lawyers representing the Board of Education and representing the families in what was called the compulsory civil discovery process. I learned the rules of civil discovery. I had the conversations with the lawyers that needed to be had because they just didn't want the statement from their one victim. They wanted everything. They wanted the names of the other 30-some odd victims that we had identified. And as a family member who wasn't pursuing suit, they did not want that to happen. So I argued successfully in circuit court for a protection order for these families, thus ensuring their privacy rights as these children grew. The family law. My work on child abuse cases, whether physical or sexual, always involved a component of the family. Our criminal cases often involve the same standard, the best interest of the child. And I work closely with the Department of Social Services. And I also have my own personal experience in family law in Maryland here. Integrity. Integrity is the quality of having strong ethical or moral principles and following them at all times, no matter who's watching or what is at stake. In June of 2020, I had to make a very difficult decision. And the decision was very difficult because I personally appeared in front of Judge William Hennessy many, many times. But what I kept on coming back to is my ethics and my integrity, the oath that I swore to take. So, yes, I am the complainant. I did file the complaint with the Judicial Disabilities Commission. I did so knowing, pretty sure when I did it, that there was going to be retaliation coming back. But I did so because of my ethics and my duty. And that is the integrity that, if elected to the bench, I will continue to apply. I'm going to speak with you all afterwards. I'm not going to answer any questions or factually on it, as there is a public hearing on April 5th. So, and everyone gets due process rights, and everyone's rights should be held intact until the full process is over with. I will not interfere with anyone's constitutional rights. You are the voters, though. You choose your circuit court judge. You live in this county. It is your community. It is your health and safety at risk. Do you want a judge with expert experience in protecting the health and safety of your community? Do you want a judge with experience in exercising discretion on a daily basis and applying the rules of evidence and law? Do you want a judge who knows when to exercise compassion and when not to? Do you want a judge who has the integrity to stand up for the rule of law and ethics and not the good old boys? Do you want a judge who will hold people accountable, but in doing so with equality, fairness, and transparency? If you do, then I am your vote for Charles County Circuit Court Judge. I look forward to speaking to each of you more in depth. Please remember to vote, which has been changed now, on July 19th. Who knows, it may get changed again, but right now the primary is July 19th. The primary is important for the judicial race because it's a nonpartisan race. That means any registered Democrat or Republican can vote for the judicial candidates, and only 2 will move on to November. So it is important for you, the community, to elect your circuit court judge. The deadline to register to vote is now, as it stands, June 29th. It will always be 21 days before the primary election. You can go online to register to vote or change your party affiliation if you wish to. You can do it at the Maryland Board of Elections website or the MVA. Also, please stop by the table on your way out. If you'd like a yard sign, you're more than willing to take one for your yard. Again, vote Sarah Proctor on July 19th, and early voting is July 7th and July 14th. In keeping with my advocacy of health and safety for this community, our county, our Charles County, I have worked with many, many community partners, from my block party to just getting resources for individuals, whether it be victims or defendants. And at this time, I want to recognize a couple, a family here that lives in the Bryans Road area. Michelle and Rob Talkington. If you guys would stand up. I'm gonna ask them to come forward because I'm gonna put them on a spot a little bit. So I'm a big believer in recognizing the community partners who advocate for health and safety in our community. Michelle and Rob, through the Life Point Church for the last 10 years, and if I have that wrong, they'll correct it, have been working with Poema, right? Did I say that right? Yes. 2 years, okay. Have been working with Poema. Michelle and Rob have a small family business of a home remodeling service. They have a contract to remodel 3 homes, and the homes are for women in transition, women in need. And not only do they renovate these homes, but they donate the kitchen. So far they have renovated 2 homes, and they have a 3rd one to go. But if any of you have remodeled your own kitchen, You know that the kitchen and the plumbing is probably the most costly part of a house. And they donate the kitchen from their own business as a family to this project. And I know it's been very near and dear to Michelle and Rob. So I'm going to ask them to come forward. I ask that you give them a little bit of time so they can explain what this resource is, so that if anyone here needs it, we can continue to build on this health and safety community.
Hello, everyone. So I just wanted to do, yes, on the correction. So Poema is an amazing project that our home church, Life Point, created. And it's really helping women to heal and to transition. So they have suffered in so many ways. And really, Sarah's already touched on some things that can happen, that can be tragic. And what Poema does, it helps to transition that tragedy to a woman's success. So for 2 years, in 2020, I believe 2020, they opened their first home, Poema, and this is in Waldorf. And we're just so excited. And we knew that there was going to be another home. Now, they've worked on it. You spoke it into existence, a third home. That hasn't happened yet, and not necessarily us remodeling it, but I can see Poema as just expanding throughout the entire county and throughout the state, because there is a need to support women, there's a need to support and protect children, and we're happy just as a local business to be a small part of that. And I'll let my husband speak to what moved and motivated him to really step up. And now who knows who has the contract, because really the bottom line is God has that contract. God made sure that he's taking care of people, but through what we do with our own hands. And everybody here understands you have to help. There's little things that you can do, whether it be donating, volunteering, supporting. And I appreciate you, Sarah, saying that you're a part of the community, and no matter what your position is, that you're going to support this community. If only more people knew how important it was to support in any way that you can your community. That's what holds us together. That's what keeps us together. That's what brings about the change. And one of those women that comes into this transitional home, and I have information for it, could change thousands of lives just because she was able to be healed. And there were people there to support, or prosecutors there to make sure that justice was served in certain cases, that mental health facilities were there. And in this home, those women receive the mental health care that they need. They receive resources. So I want to encourage all of us here to be a part of those type of community projects, events. Be a helping hand. Anything that you can do is positive for your community when you're helping. And that affects children. We know that. And let me just say, when we say you are for children, there's kids here. You might not hear the noise, but there are kids everywhere. And my husband and I have 6 children. So that next generation is critical. What we do to heal this area, keep this area whole, protect them, is critical. So Rob, I'm just gonna give that to you again. Michelle Talkington, but I'm so excited, and I just wanted to say for the timeline, we're speaking that 3rd house, we're speaking that 4th house, we'll speak 10 houses into existence for Poema to make sure that people here in Charles County get the help and resources they need. But go ahead and share what made you do that.
Hi everyone, I'm Rob Talkington with MAK Remodeling Services. When Pastor Mike from our church he started asking for donations or anybody who can help, Michelle and I looked at each other and almost started crying because they were asking for cabinets, and we were like, you can't ask for us, that's what we do. So it's almost hard for us to turn a blind eye and not find a way to help support our community. So when they asked us to do the second one, it was just like, oh my goodness, man. We gave them another kitchen. It was just another way for us to help serve our community and really do what I believe good businesses should do, is to help build their communities any way they possibly can. I'm not as long-winded as my wife, but our family, our company has a big heart for reaching out and helping women in these circumstances, and also children and other adults. So when these type of opportunities present themselves, we're more than happy to help. So I don't know, I want to speak for Michelle and Ms. Proctor, but when those situations come, bring them to our attention, and we can see what we can do to help you.
Our bottom line, Talkingtons, we're here for Charles County, and we're going to continue to stay here for Charles County and make it a better place for all of us here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And thank you for correcting me. I knew I was going to get the timeline wrong. So thank you for that. So enjoy the refreshments, enjoy the food. I'll be around to answer any questions. And again, I will appreciate the vote on July 19th for Sarah Proctor, Circuit Court Judge. Thank you.